3, 2, 1, end of test. King with a go.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and today we're going down kind of interesting military aircraft lane with a weapon that we were all very lucky in the United States military that during World War II, at the end of the war against Japan, this never saw the light of day. If it had, it could have meant very many more American combat deaths. And I believe it was Operation Downfall, if I'm correct, which was the invasion of Japan that, thank goodness, never happened. But first, Jason is on a bucket hat craze.
I'm strawberry shortcake.
The kids will love this. Jason, have you ever heard of baby raves? There's a thing called Jason's smiling. We could do, as part of Warbird Wednesday, we could do baby raves. No? He's going, no. He's actually, Jason, you know, he's like, he doesn't smile, but he actually smiled at that. I saw it in his eyes. But we're talking about the Nakajima Ki-115. And this was a weapon that was, its first flight was in March of 1945. There were 104 or 105 built. I'm going to reach over here and pick up an aircraft that represented the Japanese in their heyday, the Zero Fighter. I'll throw that up. Greg in post can throw up an image of the 115. Now, here's the difference. This aircraft, this Japanese fighter, was designed at the time to best anything the Allies had. Anything. And it pretty much did. It was for about 2 years. It had the rule of the roost, the run of the range. Look, I'm looking for another rhyme here, Jason. Whatever you want to call it. He's not giving me anything here. But what happened, and I'm standing in front of this Bearcat, the Hellcat, the Corsair, the P-38. This aircraft, the Japanese could never, ever match what came out of American arsenals. And so they went from being up against P-40s, Brewster Buffaloes, Spitfires, P-39s, interim aircraft to true air superiority aircraft. Now, those of you at home say, well, the Bearcat never saw action. It didn't, but it represented the pinnacle of American fighter technology at the time, with the Hellcat really being the zero killer that destroyed these. The Japanese, by the time the invasion of the home islands was looming, had realized that their only effective weapon was a man-flown guided missile, a kamikaze. And they inflicted more damage on the Americans at like Okinawa and those areas that they did in the entire war. And if you think about that, going back to Guadalcanal and the vicious night fights and the Battle of Leyte Gulf and a lot of those other areas, to think that Okinawa, where the Japanese, in those other battles, they really did contest what we were doing. But in Okinawa, it was all about our air defense against these Japanese essentially guided missiles, these flying bombs piloted by people, which is just, it started right at the end of Leyte Gulf, but by Okinawa, it had become just a real issue. And the ones that bore the brunt of it at Okinawa were the picket ships, and then those are those radar destroyers or escorts. And then, of course, they were going after the carriers because they were trying to figure out how to thwart American air power. And we projected a ton of it by the end of the war. The 115 was a specially designed kamikaze aircraft. And it was built to be made out of non-strategic materials, wood and steel. It had a jettisonable undercarriage. Why? because you're on a one-way mission. That's it. You're not coming back. They initially, literally, the landing gear on those aircraft, if you want to call them that, I mean loosely, were essentially metal poles with wheels, and then they could be jettisoned. They realized during ground handling that they were having a lot of problems. And by the way, on these prototypes of the 115, they lost a bunch of them. There were a number of pilots killed testing these aircraft. They were ungainly. Production versions of the aircraft, initially they didn't even have flaps, but they did include flaps in the aircraft later. And what they did with this peg with a wheel on it is they did put a shock absorber on it, like just a sliding shock. And so that was, there were some upgrades, but they were, the fuselage on these aircraft was essentially a circle where, you know, a fuselage on an airplane, if you look at this, it actually has different facets, right? It's not a perfect circle, and most aircraft are not for aerodynamic reasons. This thing was made out of a perfect round circle because it could be made easily, and it could be made by unskilled labor. And the Japanese plan was to disperse these all over the island. There were rudimentary flight controls with a kind of a joystick control column, but they were, again, rudimentary. And what I've read, the people who survived flying them that were testing them, is that they were extremely difficult to handle. Now, they were designed to take any obsolete Japanese engine and strap on the front of these things, basically anything that could get them up to speed for flight. The preferred engine was the HA-35 radial. It was a 1,151 horsepower engine, but they could take anything because, again, it's a one-way trip. They do not want to use any strategic material, so if they have stuff laying around on the engine side, they're basically going to put it onto that airplane. The most serious part of the 115 was the payload. It had a 1,760-pound bomb, which, if you hit a warship, could split the warship in half. It was enough payload to do incredible damage, and that is where I'm going to do my tribute today. And my tribute today is to the soldiers, the sailors, the airmen, and the Marines, everyone who was involved in the conflict from Okinawa, from World War II, and the conflict around those islands to the end of the war. It had become ferocious. We were fighting against an enemy that just wasn't going to surrender. They were going to go. They were basically trying to take as many of us with them, the Americans and the Allied forces with them, because their thought process was, if you can make this bloody enough, we won't come in there. The American leadership and the military over there was faced with a very real possibility of mass casualties, not only on the military side, but if they'd seen what happened with Okinawa with civilians and what the Japanese army was telling civilians was going to happen to them, which didn't happen, but a lot of civilians were killing themselves and just terrible things going on over there. So at this time, I want to salute all of the Allied forces that were involved in that preparation and invasion of Okinawa and that fighting that was around the Japanese home islands, because it was a dangerous time. And with that, I'm going to, it's Halloween or Halloween time. I guess Jason is going in there, and we're going with Werewolf Howling Ginger Beer. Caution, very hot drink. Drink with care. You're setting me up for this. What are you doing here? Takes your breath and leaves you howling at the moon. Really? Okay. Howling Ginger Beer. There's California cash refund. So 160 calories, not too bad. All right, we're going to see if this leaves me howling at the moon. So to all of those Allied forces that were involved at that tail end of World War II in the Pacific Theater, I salute you. Am I supposed to go, oh? He smiled again. I got him twice today. We'll do one more. It's not having me howl at the moon. It is pretty warm.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That is really good.
You know, I would say that's not bad. It doesn't live up to its reputation of where he's shaking his head. He's like, I didn't get him. He got me the last two. But this one, it's okay. It's not terrible. So we're going to move on. We're going to get back to this aircraft. Now, here is the scary part about the 115. The Japanese planned, and sit down for this, 8,000 of these aircraft to be built. They were completely useless on a singular basis. But as they had shown with the kamikaze attacks, if they could overwhelm the American air defense, both in the air and on the ships, if you field that many aircraft, somebody's going to get through. And this thing had enough of a payload that if it could get through, it could do real damage. And the other side of this is think about the human cost with that. That's not just airplanes. If they had fielded that many aircraft, that's 8,000 lives. So that's 8,000 Japanese pilots if they'd field all of them, and assuming that all of them that had put their lives at risk and could ultimately be killed. So it was a very serious time. The reality was the Allies overran the Japanese on the home island and were able to interrupt Japanese plans to the point that they were never built. And thankfully, we did not have to ultimately invade the Japanese home islands, and we were able to end the war. And we got very lucky on that. And that, from the Zero, the air superiority fighter, to the 115, which could barely get in the air, and really was a death trap, but they didn't care. Remember, it was a one-way ticket. That was the culmination of Japanese air power to the end of the war in the Pacific. Now, two of these, I am told, survived, and I am surprised that I have not seen one of them. Supposedly, there's one at Pima, which I haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. But Pima is a great museum, and that'd be pretty cool if it were there. So if you get over Pima Air Museum in the United States, there's one there. And I am told that there's one, and it's not specific, that there's one in a Japanese museum in the home island somewhere. And so it's ironic that this aircraft, which could have had a horrible footnote in history at the end of World War II, we've seen so many of these aircraft that we've talked about on Warbird Wednesday that don't survive. And theoretically, there's two of these aircraft in museums. So it just goes to show you, you never know. If you get a chance to gander at one of these, be thankful that they were never deployed in force. And that is what happened to the Nakajima, the Ki-115. Now you can do something fun when you want to get something for the kids. Christmas is coming up. You can get this. This is all these little planes. Jason flies them around. He has a little backpack that he can wear, and he runs around with them. There's all kinds of little airplane stuff in there, like you can do an airfield and do an air show. This is a cool gift. Click on that link, and Jason will happily run down to the good old post office and send one of these out to you. We cannot do all of this. Like I said, I'm standing in the Pacific hangar with all these amazing aircraft. Do all of this without your donations. If you have the ability, click on that link. Send us a few bucks. We can certainly use it. If you came across us on YouTube or on any of the social media that we're on, Facebook or Instagram, give us a like, subscription, and a comment. We love that. The subscriptions on YouTube are what keep us going. It helps the channel. Give us suggestions on airplanes. We have used those. I appreciate that. I believe the K-class blimp that we just did episode ago was a suggestion by a viewer. So we do take those. So get us your suggestions. Also, down in the links are education guides. They are free. You can click on those and download those for a pod, like a teaching pod, or an entire semester of teaching the kids about how airplanes work, air power, and the humanities. We encourage you to do that, so click on those links. Those education guides are free. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
3, 2, 1, end of test. King with a go.